Welcome to today's opinion show, where we're going to be discussing the Tamir Rice investigation, which was released by the county prosecutor's office last Saturday. I know we're all kind of thinking Cavs, a little bit disappointing evening, but moving forward, we want to talk about the unusual decision of the prosecutor to release the full investigative file, although it was redacted for some personal information and medical information, et cetera. But quite a contrast with his predecessor, Bill Mason, who fought against open disclosure, which is now policy in the county to the benefit, it seems, of the public, the defendants, and also the prosecutor's office. So we'd like to talk about some of the results of that investigation, what it suggests were some key issues with how the Cleveland Police Department has to reform itself, what we can expect going forward, and some of the surprises that were in there, including the severity and very graphic descriptions of Tamir's wounds. I'm Elizabeth Sullivan. I direct the editorial board for the Plain Dealer and the Northeast Ohio Media Group. I'm joined today by other members of the editorial board. Kevin O'Brien, the deputy editorial page editor for the Plain Dealer and noted columnist, and editorial writer Sharon Broussard, Chris Evans, and Pete Krouse. So I'm going to start with you, Chris, because you wrote our editorial.
I did.
You're one of a number of us who read the whole report. What do you think were the most significant takeaways from that?
To me, I mean, you know, stepping back from it, it just seemed that this was there was a sort of a domino effect of failure, beginning with the 911 call, and you have the call taker who takes that call. The caller, who is not identified, describes Tamir as a male, but probably juvenile, with a gun that he's pulling in and out of his waistband, and that the gun might probably be fake, The call taker then relays the information to the dispatcher, but she does not mention these caveats that the male could be a juvenile and the gun may be a fake. Then you have Lohman and Garnback drive up and just rush the scene, even though there doesn't appear to be any evidence that there's an immediate threat. They rush the scene. It's very unclear, and the investigators could not determine whether Lohman shouted a warning from the car before he started shooting, whether he started shooting while he was still in the car or he waited until he got out. But we know that within a very, very short period of time, 2-3 seconds, Tamir had been hit by one of the bullets. The other things that sort of hit us and that the report uncovers is that the police had a person, they had a part-time police officer working at the Kudal Rec Center, and he had been working there part-time on Saturdays for 4 years. That there was no attempt to either contact him or contact security at the rec center to determine, or to at least give them a heads up.
There was something else odd about the police officer who had been working there for 4 years, obviously must have known Tamir, because Tamir, as we learned from this investigative report, spent a lot of time at the Kudal Recreation Center because he had to sign in and those records were available. Sharon, I think it struck you when you were reading the report that he was warned that there was somebody outside, you know, shooting it wasn't clear whether he was told it was a real gun or an airsoft gun, which it was, the airsoft gun. But didn't it strike you that odd that he didn't go out to investigate?
Yeah, it did. It just seemed to me that I called it, you know, instead of a comedy of errors, a tragedy of errors, just all the things that could have happened that might have prevented this, you know, from that off-duty cop who worked at the rec center not going out there. I would think since Tamir spent 4 to 5 hours there, he might have recognized them and said, "Hey, kid, give me that gun." Also to the, you know, even to the kid who had disassembled the gun, couldn't get back on the tip, and when he gave it to Tamir in a trade for a cell phone, said, "Hey, watch out for that, it's real." It looks real. I mean, you know, just all the call taker, you know, so many, the way the cops just kind of blew themselves into the scene, and therefore might have felt that they had no, you know, no other remedy than to, you know, shoot with the person, since they were basically like in the person's face. So they were very, very close. I can't remember how many feet away, but very,
They
very
were
close. to where
between
Tamir
4 and
was.
7 feet, they
Yeah,
figured,
yeah.
you know,
From
They
from the
slid into
investigation.
the sign.
Yeah.
I mean, into the, you know, danger zone, let's say. So, you know.
The other thing that the report indicates is that, I mean, Tamir was basically playing with that gun for hours.
Yes, he
And
had been shooting at
a lot of people
tires.
saw him doing this.
Yeah.
I guess he actually pointed the gun, you know,
At a
point
woman's
blank at
face.
this woman.
Yeah.
So it seems that only the person who called thought that there was something threatening, or the person who went into the rec center and said, hey, you need to come out and deal with this guy.
Right, yeah.
Thought that there was something amiss. But Pete, I think you were somewhat skeptical about the friend who disassembled the gun and said he couldn't get the orange tip back on. Was that?
No, I don't think that was me, but I've heard those concerns that you know, if I think what people are saying, that if somebody is capable of disassembling and reassembling a gun, then it shouldn't be too hard to put the orange tip back on. I think that was the gist of what people were saying. But one of the things that struck me from that hasn't been mentioned is that after Tamir was shot, you know, the officers, you know, as we've reported, did not render any aid for about 4 minutes, but they didn't have any first aid kit material in their car. I think if you go into just about every zone car in Cleveland right now, they've got first aid material. I think that was one of the things that came out early that was probably lacking, and neither one of these individuals, the Garman or Lohman, these two police officers, I think, were capable of administering immediate first aid. An FBI agent who happened to be in the area, who was expert at that kind of thing, did arrive. I forget how many minutes after the shooting.
About three.
It was, I think it was closer to at least 4. And he did what he could. I don't think the ambulance got there till about 12 minutes. I think it's been suggested that if, you know, any quicker treatment may not have saved his life, but then again, it may have. And so anyway, that's one thing that's come out of all of this, is the need for police to be better at administering first aid, whether it's to a police officer or to a victim.
Although the FBI agent who turned out to have been a fully trained paramedic from his military service days, and who had experience with these traumatic abdominal injuries, where, you know, I won't go into the details, but can be pretty shocking to those who haven't seen it. And he actually described both officers who were on the scene as being shell-shocked.
Right.
But he basically said that, you know, it could have made matters worse if somebody who didn't really know what to do, because essentially the aid he rendered was to make sure that Tamir was able to keep breathing.
I think his concern was that if he had been put into the back of a police car and driven to the and kind of stuffed in there, that might have made a difference.
Correct.
I don't think he would have. I don't think he was suggesting, was he, that a police officer with a certain amount of training couldn't have made a difference.
Well, again, I think that is not something that really was developed in the investigative report. You have to infer from what he said. He clearly said he shouldn't have been put in the back of a police car and taken to the hospital, because the key to keeping him alive was to make sure his airways remained unobstructed.
12 minutes seems like a long time, though, for the ambulance to get.
The EMS response time was short. The other thing that compounded it was the fact that the police officers, the call taker, did not cooperate with investigators based on advice from with the call taker from her attorney, with the police officers from the police union.
Well, neither did the
Cunningham, all of them.
And that's just unacceptable.
So, I mean, what do you think about all this?
I don't think you can start the clock on the cascade of failures at the 9/11 call. I mean, the cascade of failures started when Tamir Rice decided he was going to go out in a public place and play with something that looked like a gun. You know, blame is assessed all over the place on that, and that's a pointless exercise. But people out in the public are going to react in a certain way, and you know, I'm not sure you can say that only the person who finally went inside the rec center was the only person who felt threatened. There could have been numerous other people who said, well, I'm going to give him a wide berth because it appears that he has a gun.
Yeah, but to be fair, Kevin, I mean, 12-year-olds do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And this kid apparently had a lot of time on his hands. I mean, he was out there for hours, and I've had some people in the newsroom come up to me and say, well, why would his parents, not keep a better eye on him? So, I understand that, and they probably should take, a little bit of that rap. But, many 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 13-year-olds play with fake guns in public and don't end up, being shot to death. I mean,
Really?
I think there are, I'm sure it
But
happens,
you shouldn't,
Kevin.
but you shouldn't
I'm sure
be doing
happens,
it. I mean,
yeah.
people should know that in that area. I mean, I know as a kid, I played Army, at that age, up and down my neighborhood, and we had guns and we had realistic looking rifles.
Right.
I mean, wooden stock, but, rifles nonetheless. And nobody thought twice. Nobody thought that I was going to, we were kids that were trying to break in or take somebody's cell phone. I mean, they didn't have cell phones.
And you
back
wouldn't
then.
have pointed it at a stranger either. I mean,
Well, that's
just
true.
not
That's
something
Yeah,
you
he
do.
would've.
true.
Well, but I do think that, if somebody is not getting the maybe parental supervision, they don't understand that.
Right.
Yeah,
that could be.
Right.
You guys are
and-
making my point.
Yes. I was not disagreeing with you.
Here's
at all.
one of the things that struck me reading the report is that Tamir went there all the time. He basically
Yeah.
went there
Seemed to live
because
there.
there was nobody home, and he was there with his sister and he was there with his brother, right? Because they were
Right.
on the
The
scene.
brother showed up.
So
yeah.
it's almost like this was a home away from home.
Right.
And he might not have thought of, even though it is, we acknowledged it is a public place, he meant, in his 12-year-old, mind, he
Right.
might not have thought of
Well, I
thought
mean,
of
you
it
can
that
go
way.
through an endless list of
Yeah.
woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Right.
And everything would have turned out differently. We wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion
Right.
because
Right.
everybody would be alive and well and nobody would be charged with anything.
Right.
But it just takes, all it takes is, he felt at home there, he runs into somebody who didn't feel at home there, didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And then one thing leads to another, and we've got this tragic situation.
One of the
Right.
things we called for in our editorial is for there to be a ban on the manufacture of these realistic-looking
Replica
guns.
guns,
The
yeah.
replica guns.
And I-
The
Yeah.
other thing, though, to Kevin's point is, I mean, the reason the 911 caller called was that he had survived
Yeah,
an
an
assault,
attack, yeah.
and this brought back those memories. So he was,
Yeah.
he felt threatened, like
Right.
as you said.
So do you agree with that idea that, we shouldn't manufacture replica guns?
No, I don't think it'd make any difference. I just, it's a nice gesture, but that's one more of these things that it's, well, gee, if we just had another law, then everything would be, well, but everything's not going to be fine. People are still going to do things that put them in hazardous situations, whether they intend to be or not, and then the authorities are going to react in the way they're trained to react.
Although it struck, all of us looking at that investigative report that really every single police officer who saw that weapon lying on the ground, who arrived on the scene after the shooting, and that was about 5 of them, thought it was a real
Yeah,
weapon.
they had
I mean,
to look
it
really
really looked,
close.
and,
Yeah.
and Chief Calvin Williams, when he first spoke to the media, he repeated that over
Well,
and over.
and Steve Loomis, put out that thing where he was asking people to identify the real gun and the replica
Right.
gun, and it was very, very hard to
But
differentiate.
But even so, I say it was a real gun. Why did the police officers rush right up there in the car? That's the question,
Right.
I think. And I don't think we have the answer to that because I don't think the officers have provided it.
They haven't.
But and maybe, obviously, part of it is the fact that it was unclear that, obviously to them, that this was a juvenile with a fake gun. I mean, certainly they didn't know that. But even if they thought it was an adult with a real gun, it just does not make any sense that they would drive up just like that, pop out, and bam. It just
Well,
does not make
that's-
sense.
The
That gets-
presiding municipal court judge, Ronald Adrian, basically said, simply looking at the
Video.
Yeah.
which, he didn't know that, were they outside of the range of that camera, trying to talk to Tamir, and actually the investigation said no.
No.
I mean, yeah.
But he found that that's enough probable cause for criminal
I
charges.
mean,
Right.
in the police officers', defense, it's possible that they thought that if they had, stopped 20 feet back, 30 feet back, set up got behind their car, whatever, that it could have prompted him to run. And then if he ran, say, to the rec center or somewhere else, then then they would have let him go and with a dangerous weapon. So again, we need to know more about what these police were thinking. What was the environment? How close was he to other people? At that point, I think everybody else had kind of left the scene, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
there
what it
didn't
looks
seem
like
like
on
there
the
were people
video,
around,
he's
but
by
I mean,
himself.
this is one of the big issues in the consent decree is better training, and
Yeah.
with their actions, Lohman and Garnback, I mean, what they did was they escalated an already tense
But
situation.
Chris, if your life is potentially on the line as you're pulling up as a police officer to a scene where you've been told something is going on, you have to assume that it's the worst case, because if you go in assuming that everything is really okay and that everybody who's talked to you so far has inflated the problem, then you're likely to catch a bullet.
No, I understand that, Kevin, and it's an argument that Loomis makes also. My again, not being a police officer, but I would think that the smart tactic would be to stop 20, 30 feet out. You have a microphone in the car. You ask Tamir, put the gun down, lie down. You don't rush into what could be a potentially lethal scene because of the information you received.
So we're going to have to leave it at that. Prosecutor Tim McGinty has said that he's definitely taking this case to the grand jury. The grand jury will have the ability to call additional witnesses before they make their decision as to whether indictment is merited. And we'll be following up on this story, I'm sure, with more commentary, more opinion, and we'd like to hear your opinion in the comments below this posting. Thank you for watching.